I just heard that you were very secretive about everything. Basically, you never talk. Is that the case?
I pretty much never talk. This is the first formal interview I've ever given about what it is that I do for movies here. I've been a guest on the Bangkok podcast a few times, but that's just yapping. So
you're going to talk.
I'm gonna talk as much as I can. To give you an example, when we made Hangover 2.
Wait. Now that I know you're going to talk, we start formally.
Be quiet on set.
Okay.
Chero Documentary presents Filming in Thailand, a podcast for movie lovers with exclusive stories from behind the scenes.
Rolling sound
Sound rolling.
and action.
Hi, I'm your host Stéphane Lambert, and this is a new episode of Filming in Thailand.
Indeed, this is a new episode of Filming in Thailand, and we are super pleased, happy, honored to welcome a very special guest today, Jonathan Englender. You are our first lawyer to join the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, of course, my first question is, are you filming in Thailand?
So currently, you mean in terms of current projects?
Are you filming in Thailand?
If
If the answer is no, we just wrap up. It's okay.
I am currently working with Living Films, which is my primary client for production services.
We
for
had
filming in
Chris
Thailand.
with us.
Chris has been here.
A few episodes back.
So we are currently post-strike, post-SAG strike, getting back up to speed on Alien, and just actually wrapped a production that I don't know how much I can talk about with.
You're safe here. No one's listening.
Well, no one is. With Oliver Ackerman, who is also one of the principals at Living Films, and he just wrapped work on a series. I don't know, a couple episodes or a couple scenes. It's not entirely clear to me the scope of what they were filming.
White Lotus.
No, a different one. No,
Black Lotus.
Like I said, I primarily work with Living Films when it comes to production services.
Okay. Yes.
So yeah.
Are you part of Living Film? Or?
I am not formally part of Living Films. I am associated with a law firm called
Based in Bangkok.
Based in Bangkok. I always get confused because I used to teach a British and American Studies program in the university, which is BAS. The name of my law firm is BSA. So I teach it. So I'm always getting it backwards. But Bamrung Suvisha Apisak Law Associate. So I work with BSA Law.
Filming in Thailand.
This first part of our show today will try to understand what brought you here.
Okay.
And what is it that fascinates people with being a lawyer?
Okay.
You know, it's you say, "Oh, I'm a doctor. Wow, I'm a lawyer. Wow." And it's true that a lawyer very often is kind of analyst, psychologist.
Yeah.
You know, is the doctor there. Everybody's going, "Oh, I have so much problem."
Yeah.
So you've been in Thailand for quite some times now.
Yeah. So I first visited Thailand as a tourist for the very first time in February.
That was for holidays.
For holidays, February 2004, but I moved here November 2004. So I had been a lawyer in New York for about 14 years at that point.
But you were not in the entertainment industry,
I had
from what I
nothing
read.
remotely related.
And when you came here, it was not your plan to be in the entertainment
When
industry.
I came here, it was my plan to not be a lawyer at all. I came here to completely change my profession.
Well done.
But a long list of failures, which we can catalog at great length.
Filming in Thailand.
The problem I'm originally from New York, and the problem with being from New York is you already live where other people want to move to. So moving out of New York is actually somewhat challenging because you're never really sure where to go. And it wasn't until I came to Bangkok and it just kind of, I don't know if anybody knows, boing, like it just sort of blew the top of my head off.
Really?
You know, I hadn't been to Asia. I hadn't been in this kind of environment. And so I was like, this is interesting.
But you've never been to Asia. So it was your first stop,
It was my
first experience.
It was my first experience
with Asia.
Yeah. And we had just settled a big pharmaceutical liability case, and
Back in New York.
back in New York, and I booked a 2-week vacation to Thailand, and then I looked up the flight time, and I made it a 3-week vacation to Thailand. And I found that law firms are smart not to let their employees or their associates take more than 2 weeks at a time, because it changes your life, and that's what
You know,
happened.
it's said that if you take more than 2 weeks holidays, you lose 20 points of IQ.
Yeah. Well, that may be, but it was that may be what led to this decision. But,
I know, that's not what I meant.
but
Filming in Thailand.
So you moved to Bangkok.
so yeah, so I moved here, and in about 2005. So I hadn't been here very long. I moved here November 2004, just before the tsunami, which is neither here nor there, but it helps fix when I moved.
Sure.
And I moved here, and it's actually a little bit timely. I got asked by some people. I don't know if you know David Ismalone and Ying Julalak, who very sadly just passed away. And they were at the time working with a Thai partner to help bring a Mark Burnett reality show
Okay.
to Thailand to be produced here through a Singapore partner. And they approached me and they said, "Can you help us with an international television co-production deal?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. That is pure malpractice. I shouldn't touch it. I shouldn't be anywhere near that. Everything I did was so far removed from that."
Why did they approach you with that?
Because they found out I was a lawyer.
request.
They knew I was a lawyer. We had met socially, and they knew I was a lawyer. And I still remember David said to me, he said, "Okay, look, we understand. You don't know what you're doing. You've never done this before. We get it, but you know more than we do. So can you help negotiate this?" And so I did, and I was still very much a New York litigator and not an Asian transactional lawyer, which is a very different way of comporting yourself professionally. I was much more aggressive in negotiations than I am now. And, the show ultimately didn't get made, but I made a lot of contacts in the industry. And
From that
From that
first gig,
experience,
from
yeah.
that experience.
and so we can name names here, right?
Please, of course.
So Richie Moore, I don't know if everybody knows Richie, the cameraman. So Richie, I had met Richie on that, and he kept saying to me, "Oh, you should meet Living Films. You should meet Living Films. You should meet Living Films." And I was like, I really don't want to be a lawyer. You don't think I want to work in entertainment? This is a bad profession in a difficult
Sure, it's
industry.
very difficult
industry.
We'll talk about that a bit later, but yes.
And then eventually I wound up just socially meeting with Chris and Richie one day in about 2007. And we got along, and I sort of reluctantly agreed to become Living Films' lawyer and look at their contracts. He said, "We're at the point now where we want to professionalize our operations." And he said to me, "Can you write contracts that are fair to everyone?" Which was so...
That's interesting because he mentioned that
Yeah.
during his filming in Thailand show,
Oh, okay.
that he wanted contracts to be fair.
Yes.
And I read one of your interviews where you said that this is not the way usually a lawyer will approach a case.
Right.
And so it means that you got this grasp of the Thai culture where if it's fair, it goes. If it's unfair, it blocks.
Well, yes. I mean, one of the very first things that I was told about negotiating with Thai parties was they said, "Look, Thai people will be very accommodating if they can be." But they said, "Kon Thai gua paka," right? They
Yeah, you like to quote this, yes.
They are afraid of the pen.
Absolutely.
And so as a matter of just practicality, a contract is only good if the other side is willing to sign it. You can put whatever you want in a contract, but if the other side isn't willing to sign, it doesn't do you any good.
Filming in Thailand.
You're in Thailand. You have no clue about this industry, the entertainment industry. You have no clue about Asia.
Correct.
And you have to draft a contract.
Yes.
what was your feeling? What was your state of mind at that time? Were you like saying, if I mess this one up, I go back to New York, or this is the chance of a lifetime to enter from the through the big door?
Neither. I when I first got approached on that first deal with that television co-production thing, I thought, oh, make a little money.
Okay.
Just see what happens. Maybe make some pocket money. It wasn't going to be a big fee, and just why not? But it really wasn't where my energy was. So the stakes didn't feel particularly high for that. It was, so if I can go back to when I met Chris and started working with Living Films, I was sort of leisurely reviewing their form agreements, location releases and extras releases, and just going on the internet and finding other models and saying, okay, would this be good or that be good? What would be useful? And then I got a call one day and say, Harvey Weinstein just got kicked out of China and he's landing in Bangkok and we have a movie and here we go. And and it was a film called Shanghai.
Okay.
With again, this was all so new to me. So suddenly I'm on a project with John Cusack and Ken Watanabe. And I think
Harvey Weinstein didn't make any move on you.
He did. He
were safe.
He left me alone. This was before I didn't know anything about him. I did jokingly say that Chris should make his own documentary about his 24 hours with Harvey, because Chris kind of ran around Bangkok with him.
Filming in Thailand.
I have a quote for you.
Yes.
You just mentioned Harvey Weinstein, that before going to jail for harassing a woman and being a predator, said, at least this is what internet is attributing to him.
Yeah.
In this industry, the movie industry, you're only as good as your lawyer and your last film. One protects your art, the other defines your value. What do you think about that?
Okay, in defense of my profession, I feel that the value of lawyers is often overlooked. I think, in this way, I've got very lucky, I think, working with Living Films. But I would strongly encourage anybody in any industry, and in this industry in particular, to view your contracts, your legal, your approach to negotiations, the whole legal end of your business as a brand extension.
What do you mean by brand extension?
So, for example, you may have a very professional, locations team, art department, transportation, all of your HODs, but you're pulling forms off the internet.
HODs, head of departments.
Head of departments, right? So your execution on production services may be absolutely first rate.
Okay.
But it rounds out your sense of your how you present yourself to the studios. If you say, okay, we also have, not exactly a business and legal affairs division, but we've got you covered on this front. And, a lot of my job is I'm a cultural go-between.
Okay.
So a lot of what I do
Very interesting way to put it, yes.
I understand, I speak studio lawyer. I know what they want. I know what they understand.
Very weird language.
It is a weird language.
Studio lawyer.
It is a weird language. And it's spoken in a very limited, in boardrooms in LA.
Can you imagine?
And it is not always understood here. And so a lot of what my job is to find that point at which a studio lawyer says, okay, and at which the Thai counterparty says, okay.
So there is this famous series that's been running for centuries titled Law and Order.
Yeah.
Could we say that your job here in Thailand is more law and chaos?
It is. Yeah, I mean, in a broad sense, yes. But the interesting thing is that for all that people are, let's say, afraid of committing to things contractually, or that people, I think, sometimes misapprehend the nature of the legal or contractual environment here. I don't think in any of that, I've worked on 20 plus, maybe 30 productions at this point. I don't remember anybody just, washing their hands and walking away from a contract.
On the Thai side, you mean?
On the Thai side. Yeah, in general. It's never really, I just don't recall this kind of being an issue. one of the things that we find, I mean, of course, in any contractual relationship, especially, if you've got a longer term production or across productions, issues will come up. And by being fair to the other side, you build up goodwill so that when issues arise, you have a good history to fall back on.
There is always this paragraph in contracts that goodwill is of essence.
Yes. And in Thailand, actually, that's the law. The law has a
What do you mean?
background.
Really?
Yeah. So as I understand it, I'm not a Thai qualified attorney, but from my discussions with my colleagues who are, that there is a reasonableness and a good faith element that is just deemed to be part of every contract.
So the intention, the goodwill of parties are important.
Yes, and that you will both go forward in good faith, because in any contract in any language, there's a limit to what the contractual language can do, and you always build in a reasonableness element.
Okay.
You can look at a commercial lease that says we can throw you out for any breach. Now, let's say your stereo pops on and you're 10 decibels too loud for 5 minutes. Are they really going to kick you out? Is that really what they meant? Probably not.
Filming in Thailand.
Let's go back to your own parcours, your own, what turned you into this guy that is like the lawyer of the Thai film scene,
Right.
the foreign lawyer of the Thai scene film. What kind of qualities do you have that made it possible to be this go-between or in-between guy? You said you're a
Right.
cultural
Well,
middleman.
part of it, I do want to say, I know this is cliched, but I really am always learning. I really am always finding either a new cultural wrinkle or my understanding of situations that get more sophisticated, my negotiating posture, my negotiating tactics. But a lot of it was just trial and error.
Filming in Thailand.
We're talking about the Labua Hotel contract for Hangover 2.
So you're referring to the location that we see in Hangover 2,
Yes.
that is on the top of the world.
Yes.
There's this beautiful rooftop with a view that
Yes.
is excellent. So Chris from Living Film told us that he had the choice between paying $1 million or nothing. And he chose nothing and he got it.
Right, but
How much were you involved in this nego?
so I was not in. Oh, excuse
There-
me, I keep knocking the camera.
The people watching us gonna be busy a bit. So how much were you involved?
So
in
I'm
this
not
nego?
actually directly involved in the negotiations. I can be sometimes. I'm called in, but typically those are negotiated at the principal to principal level. But once the deal terms are agreed upon broadly, then it falls to me
Okay.
to kind of capture them. And so that was I like that example because it showed what goes into my thinking when I come to these contracts. So I said, okay, I basically have 3 parties here, even though the contract is going to be between Living Films and the Labua Hotel. What does everybody need here? So there are certain things that, for example, the studios, whether it's Warner Brothers, or always needs, right? And I call them the Holy Trinity. They always need the grant of rights. They always need the rights in what they shoot. They always need to assign those rights freely. And they always need to get the other side to waive their right to an injunction, right? This is the
Guys, this is a masterclass that cost a fortune.
Filming in Thailand.
So you have these 3 elements.
These are 3 that the studios are really the
studios are looking for,
essentials.
yes.
These are really the essentials. There's a lot of there's confidentiality, and there's the a sort of a wider notion of assignment and whatnot. But these are the core to the nuclear reactor,
okay.
But in this case too, because as everybody knows, the Labua got to do the Hangover Suite, Hangover Teeny. So there's a promotional element. So I'm not a studio lawyer, but I'm like, well, okay, if there's a promotional element, what do we need there? Well, the studio needs to control messaging. So I put in, okay, you agree that, everything will be pre-approved by the studio, including the content, including the timing, because someone might say, okay, they just wrapped, let me go with my Hangover Teeny, but maybe you want to wait till the movie comes out. So, you build in that all the promotional stuff will be coordinated.
Okay.
What does Living Films need? Living Films needs flexibility. It needs the ability to move about the hotel. It needs the freedom to do its job. But the hotel, conversely, needs to not have its ordinary operations interrupted too much. So I will talk with living films like, what do you really need? Can we do this? Can we agree to coordinate all of our movement of personnel and equipment through the hotel with hotel personnel? Can we agree? Sometimes I can't remember that one, but you shoot a luxury hotel. They want the crew to be looking decent. Everyone's wearing collared shirts. Where are people smoking, watching their language? I always use the wrong term, like I'm fishing. It's not catch and release, but basically stop and release. So you've got crowds coming through, but you're shooting in the lobby. So you're interrupting the flow. So we agreed in advance just to minimize that impact. And I think as Chris said, and it was true, that basically one word of that draft contract got changed. Everybody read it and was like, yep, that's pretty much what we thought. Yep, that's what we thought. Yep, that's what we thought. So to me, that was kind of the model for how one of these agreements should go, that everyone should read it and say, yeah, that seems fair. That's right.
It requires all parties to be at a certain level of understanding, trust,
Absolutely.
will.
Absolutely. And that, a lot of that work is done before I get involved. So that's done when the principals are out negotiating. My job is to not screw that up. I don't know how I can curse here or not, but
Please do. I'm French.
oh, okay. So my job is really not to mess that up. So I think that the contracting process, I know this is contrary to how a lot of lawyers think, but the contracting process should enhance
Okay.
the trust so that when the parties are then have to work together, because if we come in with scorched earth tactics or we jockey for every minor advantage, it just pisses the other side off.
So that calls for another quotation. Yes, another quotation. How much for this masterclass, please? That calls for another quote that is related to what you're talking about. It's from Robert Shapiro, this famous American lawyer that I think is based in
O.J. Simpson.
O.J.
Yes.
Simpson case. Do you have any insider information?
I
on
have,
the O.J. Simpson?
I have my personal opinion.
Okay.
Filming in Thailand.
Let's move to the Robert Shapiro quote. In the legal profession, the best storyteller wins. The same holds true in Hollywood, whether it's in the courtroom or on the screen. It's all about captivating your audience. So I guess you agree on that. It's
I absolutely agree on that. And this is, again, fortunately, again, I've worked primarily with living films and very closely with Chris, and our styles are closely aligned. And so we have found that, we don't try to hide risks.
okay.
I think if you disclose risks to people up front and allow them to fairly evaluate, is this something I want to do or is it something I don't want to do? They are more inclined to trust you and you're more inclined to close on the deal. So another example, I think, was the boat in Hangover 2 that comes up on the shore at the end.
From Bangkok to Phuket
From Bangkok
in 3
to
hours.
Phuket in 3 hours, exactly. And it, we said to the owner very clearly, we can insure and we can take whatever steps we can. We can agree to repair, but we can't guarantee the scope of the damage. It might be more than we're able to repair, and we just want you to know that going in. And so, and he was like, "Oh, all right, well, thank you for letting me know." And okay. And so then when it came time to the contract, we put it up front, so he wasn't surprised, and we don't try to hide anything. So, like I said, I think that when the principals are negotiating, the job of the lawyer is to make sure to carry over that trust and not fuck it up.
Filming in Thailand.
It's interesting because this applies to every walk of life,
Yes.
every kind of business. I mean,
One thing also that's important to, I think, remember in this industry, I think, especially in production services, in filming in Thailand, is that when you're filming, when you negotiate with the Thai counterparty, regardless of if they are a puyai or
Puyai means the big boss.
whether
Yeah.
they're a big shot
Yes.
or they're a noodle vendor, you're there because the director and the producer want what they have. And so you are almost always a little bit, not on the back foot, but you're more the beggar than the chooser. right? They've seen.
But that's arguable because you are giving them access, especially with the kind of production you're involved in. You're giving them access to a worldwide audience that can be a life changer.
Yes, and
your approach is very fair because you could come up and say, "Hey, we are the big guys. It's yes or no."
it's true. But for example, if let's say we're negotiating to close down a street, like for example, when we made. We started life as the coup, but I was told Americans didn't know what a coup was, so they changed it. They changed it to no escape.
Okay, yeah, because I read about the coup, but
Yeah.
yes, it's no escape.
Yes, when it saw life as no escape. But for example, if you're going to close down a street for a riot scene, you got to go through and talk to all the shop owners and what I call paper up the street. Just get a little location release from everybody. Well, if you've got a noodle shop in some back soy in Chiang Mai, global exposure doesn't mean anything to you.
For sure, yes.
And the relatively small sums of money aren't life changing. So we are kind of in this position of saying, hey, can you please help us out? And so I try as much as possible to take that into account, take that negotiating posture into account, so that we don't come off like jerks.
That's very interesting and very powerful, and you need to be very self-confident in a good way to be able to have this posture.
Well, and the difficulty is that I still need that holy trinity. So I try to keep my eyes on the prize. The truth is that the things that the studio is worried about, which is, again, do I have the rights to what I filmed? Can I do what I want with those rights? If there's a dispute, will I only be sued for money? No one's going to hold me hostage. These things don't affect the location owner typically, or the equipment company. What do they want? They want their stuff returned. They want some money. They want not too much of a hassle. They want their stuff returned in good condition. So we're often not caring about the same things. And if I can get that understood, then it often comes together.
Now, it also requires the other party to trust that you're acting in goodwill, that you're not just acting as the good guy, just to sweeten the deal so that they accept and they forget to check on the important stuff on for their side. And it seems that you're doing this quite successfully so far in Thailand. Do you think it's related? It's linked to the Thai culture, where
absolutely,
you have to trust people
absolutely
by default.
And I think a lot of it is the personal touch. Like I said, by the time I get in, locations, the locations team has been there, the production team has been there, and if all goes well, I'm just in the background. If all goes well, the lawyer never comes to the surface. I'm just sitting there saying, yeah, okay, those terms are okay. We can make those changes easily. But for example, I've worked on productions from cultures where this kind of trust doesn't make a lot of sense. So it actually, if you're looking out for the other side's interests, it looks a little suspicious. Like
that's where I was leading to.
What do you really want?
Sure. You're so nice. What's the catch?
What do you really want? I've not had that experience in Thailand with the Thai counterparties, but I've worked on productions with people from countries that have that kind of understanding. And it sometimes it's a little bit difficult. And there I try, when I'm dealing with them, usually that's in negotiating, let's say the production service agreement. Mm-hmm. I will take a more traditional lawyerly posture.
Filming in Thailand.
There is this common belief that the job of a lawyer is to deal with what's possible, not what is probable. And so the field of possible, if you start to explore everything, I mean, it could be a deal stopper because
absolutely.
So how do you deal with this in this industry that is so chaotic and creative and going maybe everywhere?
So the way I deal with it is by acknowledging that we have to protect ourselves against the probable, and we cannot protect ourselves against the possible. And the way that this creates difficulties typically is in dealing with studio lawyers. So typically what will happen is if I have a set of form agreements, not every studio, but by and large the studios like to see them beforehand. And they are coming from, they're speaking their Hollywood lawyer language in Los Angeles. and they are
yes.
overburdening the contracts. And I try to say there is no art
Mhm.
to putting every clause in a contract. And one studio lawyer said, we take a pre-litigation posture. We are trying to guard against everything. And I said, but the problem with that is that you are overburdening the agreements, and you are making us take positions in the contract that erode trust up front. So you're paying
Sure.
an immediate cost to hedge against an entirely theoretical liability. And, at this point, I like to think, enough experience and enough credibility that when I say to the studios, can we please let this go? Can we please not worry about this? They trust my judgment. I hope they do. That they say that I have some idea what I'm talking about. I don't know if you want an anecdote. I do have a funny anecdote about that
Please.
now. But
Please, let's go for the anecdote.
we were working on one big studio production out of England, and they asked that we send all our form agreements to their English counsel, a firm called Wigan. And I sent my location agreements, and I wrote a long margin note that said,
Okay.
please, Mr. English lawyer, please do not ask me to put a defense and indemnity provision into this. Please do not ask me to say that if somebody gets injured on the property and it's the property owner's fault, that they will defend and indemnify us. And I said, because we are the beggars, not the choosers. We are on a back foot when it comes to these things, and we do not want to erode trust. We don't gain much more than Thai law would ordinarily provide, and it's never come to pass. So like I said, we've never asked somebody to defend and indemnify us, either with the clause or without it. So that, again, we are paying an immediate cost in terms of trust, in terms of burden on the locations team, versus some risk. And are you really going to sue this location to get defended and indemnified? But so the response was,
yes.
I get the contract back, and the British lawyer has written, this position is well considered, well articulated, and clearly born of long experience. I reject it in its entirety.
So what happened next?
So we had a long fight about. I was like, please don't make that. And I think we put it in, and the other side came back and said, I don't agree to this, and it came out in the long run anyway. So, but I was like, oh, well,
That's a good story. That's a really good story.
Points for brevity.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Tero Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
And we're back with our fantastic guest of this episode of Filming in Thailand, Jonathan Englander. He's a lawyer, but he's a nice lawyer. But then, after listening to you for this first part, I have this quote from another American attorney called David Boyce.
Sure, very famous.
And he says, in the movie industry, you are as good as your last success. It's about what you can do, not what you have done. So when you said people are kind of trusting, but for sure are trusting your judgment or your opinion, is based on what you've done, your past success, which is in contradiction to what this David Boyce is saying. How do you deal with that?
Well, fortunately, my role is fairly static. So I think what David Boyce means is, did you read the public taste right? Did you tell the story that needed to be told at that moment that was compelling? What I do is I'm always sweeping up behind the elephant, whether that elephant is an action film, is a comedy, is high budget, low budget. The nature of what I do remains pretty much the same. So my audience is really the people I need to convince that I know what I'm talking about is first and foremost studio counsel.
Okay.
Who I liaise with, who can look me up on IMDb and see that,
some references.
I've been through this a few times, that I've been here a long time. I probably a little obnoxiously, whenever I have an initial Zoom call with a studio counsel, if there's any Thai person on the team, I'll make a point of like, oh, sawadee krap, ben Bangkok. Like I'll make a point of showing,
You know the
I have
place.
some idea what I'm doing here.
Do you show your reel? No.
I do. It's with my
Yeah,
Lupert hotel contract.
The 3 minutes video.
Yeah, I wish. So they're my primary audience, and then after that, it's the Thai counterparty, because interesting thing about, from a lawyer's perspective, not that interesting for the world, but an interesting thing about from a lawyer's perspective in Thailand is that the other side typically doesn't have a lawyer.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
And sometimes they do, if you're negotiating with like Lupert, I don't even remember if he brought in his lawyer or not, but typically a large corporate,
They have a legal department.
they'll have a legal department who will handle this.
Yes.
But often, even if you're dealing with wealthy individuals, they often don't have. And so I'm looked at like a Puchiao Chan, I'm looked at like the expert.
Okay.
I'm the law speaker rather than being one side's advocate. So I always have to say, look, I represent these guys. But they are looking to me to explain. And so I do my best. I tell them they should have a lawyer, of course, but I do my best, if they don't, to still look after their interests and to explain as fairly as I can what the import is of each of these terms. So I still need to maintain that credibility with them.
Filming in Thailand.
I understand you are the fence separating the studios. That is an industry.
Right.
They are not doing art. They are producing a product, marketing it, distributing it, and trying to get enough returns to produce the next one.
Yes.
That's what a studio is.
Yeah. Yes.
But the product is creative stuff, is art.
Yes.
And this is where it becomes interesting, to say sophisticated or complicated.
Yeah.
So your how do you say, your references, the list of films you've been involved in is quite impressive. Recently, there was Hope Frozen, this fantastic documentary that got an Emmy Award. You 13 Lives, but Miss Marvel, The Rescue, The Serpent.
Yes.
That is a scary TV series. Tremors Island, and so many others. The Hangover. Of course, The Hangover.
The Hangover is good because it's the one thing that was filmed in Thailand that everybody knows.
And that's for sure.
So, a lot of things like The Serpent, people will know, of course, it was made in Thailand. What they don't know is that the Dharmasala scenes and the Kathmandu scenes were filmed in Chinatown. That's always a sort of a fun fact to trot out, is how much Thailand can be dressed.
Filming in Thailand.
Back to your role as a gatekeeper. Where I'm leading to is there. On one side, you have the industry. It's very square, and it's a money machine. And on the other, and they need contracts. They need things to be clear, and they need things to sell to their investors, and it has to be
clean
square.
Chain of title is really what they're looking for.
On the other side, you have artists, creators, creatives. And somewhere in the middle, you have the production industry.
Exactly.
Saying,
exactly
okay,
right.
they want to film at the Bua, and he needs a helicopter shot, and the actors have to come from the elevators, but the elevator is closed. They cannot have an helicopter because it's forbidden to shoot from a helicopter in Bangkok at that time. And the Bua does not allow any filming crew to come in.
Right.
And you have a director with a vision and the actors with a precise schedule.
Right.
Where are you there?
Again, my job is, after that's all been negotiated and agreed upon at the principal to principal level, my job is to come in and as quickly and as cleanly as possible, paper that up in a form that everyone can agree on.
But do you find yourself in a position where you have to go back to the people, the stakeholder, and say, hey, and try to sweeten the deal and to make sure that, as you were describing, on the one side they want a square, on the other side they want a free shape form.
In the drafting process.
Well, how was it? Sorry to interrupt, but how was it with Hangover?
I miss Hangover. Hangover was a blast.
Filming in Thailand.
I don't know, people may not remember back when we were, when Hangover 2 was made, there were a ton of productions. There were...
Golden age, golden time for production.
There was, we had Hangover 2, Scorpion King 3, The Impossible, The Lady, and I feel like there was one other film that was being made. Not when I say we, I'm in Thailand generally,
Sure.
not me or Living Films. Living Films
At
was
that time, there
making-
were regularly hundreds of foreign productions
Yeah.
being shot in
Well,
Thailand at the same time.
I mean, this is an aside. I feel that the number of productions has actually increased with the rise of streaming. And certainly the number of productions on a scale where the services of me or a colleague or someone like me would be of value. There used to be a lot of, it used to feel like the rhythms were 1 or 2 studio projects would come in a year, and now it's boom, boom, boom. you
And
know.
Thailand seems to be the place where they all come to shoot.
Yes. And I think and I think I'm parroting probably what a lot of other people have said, but it's depth of crew, it's the quality of the infrastructure, and it's the rebate, which is starting to mature into something more, reliable and bankable. And
The rebate is working so smoothly.
and
here we go.
And here, I think I am a tail that the rebate dog wags. So when there are certain things that I put in contracts because that's what the rebate auditors are looking for. Whether they're things I would put in a contract in any other context, maybe not.
But ultimately, the rebate is functioning.
Ultimately, the rebate is functioning. No, for sure, checks are flowing, and I'm not an expert in rebates. My understanding is they need to be predictable enough that they can be monetized in advance, so that you can secure a loan or you can count on X amount coming out back in your.
But basically, the system of the rebate is that you're spending a certain amount in production in Thailand, and then you get up to 20%, I think, today,
I believe that's right if you meet certain criteria.
in cash
Yes.
to where the fund originated from.
Yes, that's right.
Which is a great help for any productions looking for cash flow.
No, for sure. And the generally received notion, I don't know, the general wisdom is that Malaysia used to have a 30% rebate, but that was in lieu of having a robust filmmaking infrastructure.
They have the Pinewood Studios.
Yeah, they have Pinewood and they've got Biscuit, which by all accounts is a terrific production services company, but it doesn't have again, this is hearsay.
No, of course.
But it didn't have the depth of equipment. It didn't have the depth
the
of crew.
know-how of the crew.
The know-how of the
Absolutely.
crew and all of this. And so,
And also the a huge amount of extras and
yes.
characters. I mean, talent available
Yes.
to act in a film.
Filming in Thailand.
When we were making Hangover 2, I was working closely with a firm called Baker & McKenzie. And
Yes.
they had their associate retreat, and they invited me down to talk about my filmmaking experience. They thought it would be fun for their associates. So my first slide was the very special thanks, a screen capture, the very special thanks from Shanghai. And I put it up on the screen. I had my laser pointer, and I said, I want to show you. So first of all, we're in the very special thanks, which is basically, when they're going to roll the, no animals were harmed thing. So we're already at the very bottom. But I said, here I am. It said Jonathan Englander, at that time, Englander Legal Consulting. And I said, I want to point out that I am above Baker & McKenzie. So here's, the lawyer, David Waschenfelder. Here's the lawyer from Baker & McKenzie. But all of us are several notches below the Thai military canine unit. So this should show you in what high esteem counsel is held.
Okay.
But anyway, so if I had been the lawyer on Scorpion King 3, I started on it, and then for various reasons I didn't continue.
You are listening to Filming in Thailand, a podcast by Taro Documentary, with your host, Stéphane Lambert.
And here we are back for this third chapter of our Filming in Thailand show with Jonathan Englander. You said Jonathan or Jonathan, but yourself, you're referring to your name as Jonathan.
I often just say John to keep it easier
John.
for the Thai tongue.
Okay, so Jonathan, John.
John.
Let's go to discuss about your profession in the entertainment industry and what it's becoming. Two things. Of course, we are going to talk about AI. AI means artificial intelligence. I don't see any intelligence in AI. It's just a bunch of programmers finding a ways for computers to go super fast.
Yeah.
So we have AI.
Right.
artificial intelligence. I believe intelligence is a bit overrated for AI because it's just a bunch of programmer putting lines of codes and making the machine going super fast.
Yes.
Now we have creative AI.
Right.
From your understanding, your knowledge, your know-how of what is included in this AI creative stuff, is there a real creativity in AI, or is just even more algorithm, more data put together to come up with something that anyone could come up with, but faster?
So,
And I'm asking this
Yeah.
question because then we will see how it interacts with
Sure.
your work and the contracts and IPs. And
well, so the first opportunity that I really had, I think, like a lot of people, to give this close thought was during the writer's strike and the
Okay.
actor strike in the U.S.
in the US, that
Yeah.
affected the industry all over the world because
Yes.
suddenly there was no content to
Everything
to the
stopped,
film.
you
Yes.
know. And so I jokingly, during the writer's strike, I opened ChatGPT, and I just was curious to see how creative they were. And so I put a scene in that said, write a scene in which I gave them very obvious names. Mary discovers that her husband, Bob, who has recently passed away, had previously, unbeknownst to her, had previously killed his first wife and had escaped from prison and had his whole second life with her.
Okay.
So I put this in, and it says, exterior cemetery day. Mary stands crying at the grave of her husband, Bob. From the shadows, a mysterious figure approaches. He taps Mary on the shoulder. Mary, did you know that your husband, Bob, previously murdered his wife and then escaped from prison and had a second life with you? Mary, no, I didn't. Mysterious figure disappears into the shadow. And see, I was like, oh, well, I don't know exactly what people are so worried about this. This doesn't seem like a particular threat.
You know, it sounds like a
to the
low budget dialogue for low budget series.
terrible.
Yeah, but it
shockingly
exists,
bad.
actually.
Shockingly bad. To me, the only way it impacted me, and this was actually not in production services. I do a little bit of work for some Thai talent in their dealings with the international market. And so I was doing a contract for a Thai actress who was negotiating with a Chinese finance company out of LA. And there was a metaverse clause. And what they wanted, so it wasn't so much about could AI replace her, but what they wanted to do was they wanted to be able to scan
Aha.
and then use her likeness without even consultation rights in the initial draft, let alone approval rights, in sequels, spin-offs, derivatives, NFTs, gaming, promotion, and so on.
So they hire this actress for a film, then the user image, her voice, her acting skills, for whatever they come up with.
This is what they seemed to want. And we said no. I mean, one reason that I was very comfortable. First of all, I was very comfortable taking that position because I know this actress and I know she wants to jealously guard how she appears.
And she might certainly be right about that.
No, I think she's absolutely right. But the other was also there is no industry standard because it was in the middle of the strike, so everyone was fighting about it. So I didn't have to risk looking like an asshole because I was taking some extreme position. But it was a fight. They really kept coming back, and they kept saying, "Okay, well, we'll get some. You'll get some consultation right." And I was like, "It can't. No." And suddenly having to understand what the potential applications were, and which it's always easier to say no globally,
Of course.
right? That's always the safest approach for a lawyer. To say yes, but requires a lot more knowledge, a lot more judgment, and a lot more risk. And I was sort of trying to get up to speed quickly on was there a yes, but that I would feel comfortable with.
Do you feel, or do you know if this is going to be a standard clause in contract for talents? You're acting in our film, but we need to have you scan because we're going to have shorts, we're going to have whatever we want.
It's funny. The only time this has come up so far was in a contract for some animals.
Okay.
And the folks who were providing a dog, and they were very worried. And I don't want to belittle their concern, but their concern was this dog his image is commercially valuable to us, and we don't want that dog to be scanned. Their concern was that the studio would go and make dog food commercials, and I was like, I don't really think they're in the dog food commercial business, but I was happy to allay their fears and say, if to the extent that we scan, it will only be used, for this show.
Filming in Thailand.
By way of disclaimer, I want to say that most of because I largely work on studio productions, they have a clearance department. So I very rarely get involved in the actual practical application of copyright law. I've been asked a few times about, for example, filming Thai money. And apparently you need the permission of the Thai bank
absolutely
with potential for counterfeiting and whatnot. But those issues typically don't fall onto my desk. If they come up, I punt them to studio counsel.
No, but more particularly on this replicating people, like, because you could say, so these are for talents, but you could say you're a production company, you spend fortune in spotting this location that is fantastic, that is basically making the film because it's become iconic, and the studio says, yeah, we're going to use the same location for our next 10 episodes without using your services because it's scanned.
Okay, I'm drawing on my general understanding as a lawyer here. My feeling is that would not be problematic from a legal perspective. I suppose I had never even thought about it, could we somehow say, look, if you come to something comes to your attention via our services, then either it can't be used in the future. But there's very few locations, I think, that would be proprietary.
Yeah, that's the tag word. Proprietary.
That would be proprietary to a particular company. So I think if they said, look, we want to go in and do what they call photogrammetry, is that it? Basically kind of 3D scanning.
Oh, yes.
Like LiDAR scanning people do and whatnot. And said, look, for example, in a regular, normal, old school locations agreement, we typically say we have the right to recreate your location elsewhere. So what would be so dramatically different, especially if, let's say, it's a waterfall or something natural, it's something publicly available? I don't see what the principled basis would be to say you're not allowed to use this in the future as a virtual. And I think one of the dovetails with where I think the industry may be going in a lot of ways is virtual production. Like The Mandalorian and these sorts of
virtual production, virtual studio. So the decor, the setting is virtual. So it doesn't exist in real.
Right.
The script has been written by an AI, so there is no human being directly involved, and it's on fast channels somewhere on TV, so that no one's watching except.
Well, I think
where are we going with that?
I think that the question that you raised about using people's likenesses. I think that the SAG contract is one of the
SAG being the
Screen Actors Guild in America.
Okay.
And apparently I learned a lot about this, like everybody else, or like many people, I think, during this strike, which is that, the bulk of SAG membership are day players, extras, these kinds of folks. And many of whom are struggling even to make enough to qualify for the union health plan. So my feeling is that within very short order, AI is going to render redundant the need for human background players. I think that they will generate faces that are individual enough. The IP issues that people talk about, and again, I'm not an expert in this at all, but people talk a lot about, can IP be copyrighted? And I don't...
Can IP be?
I'm sorry, not IP, sorry. Can AI images get copyrighted?
Sure.
Sorry, can AI images be copyrighted? And so far the trend seems to be no. But that's different than can they be trademarked, which is a different kind of intellectual property protection.
It's copyrighted by the ChatGPT, for instance, of the app you
or
use?
Like say the prompt writer.
Okay, or the person who are using it. For instance, Filming in Thailand has a poster that comes from one of these creative AI app.
Right.
So I check. This creative AI app does not own any copyright.
Right. But you may not own a copyright.
That's the question, yes.
I'm not your lawyer, but I'm not advising you. But the difference is you might not have a copyright, but you may
So I don't need to pay the invoice you just sent me.
But you may-
Okay, great, thanks.
Not the one I...
The one you're going to?
The one I'm going to say.
Filming in Thailand.
There's a difference between copyright and trademark.
Mhm.
So if you have trademarked this image, if it has become associated in the marketplace with the Filming in Thailand podcast,
Okay.
then if somebody else used it, you can say, wait a minute, you're infringing on my trademark. Not you're infringing on my copyright, but you're infringing on my trademark. And there's different, it's basically...
No, I actually owe you something.
That's some actually useful information. So I think that this contract may be one of the last. I think SAG the core function of SAG may be just overall challenged by AI, because you're not going to need, extras need to be, you need to put on their wardrobe, you need makeup, you need transportation, you need insurance, you need catering.
Sure.
So I think virtual production is going to change.
But that's another
Yeah.
debate. I would be very happy to have this discussion with you later on. But the fact that if you take out the extras, if you take out independent movie making, then where do you get the talent from? Because you don't say, oh, this is going to be a talent.
Right.
There is a very complicated, sophisticated, complex tough path
Yes.
from being a no one to someone with talent.
Right.
And maybe one of the challenges is to keep this industry with nurturing talents.
I think that, first of all, I think that two things. First, I think that virtual production will come over time, and that will never fully replace practical location shooting. I don't think it can. Part is that any practical location needs to be created as a digital asset if you want to use it in virtual production. So maybe just easier to go there. I think just as VFX have not completely replaced practical effects.
Absolutely.
They're
enhancing.
There's really no limit to what computer effects can do, and yet people still use practical effects. So I think that'll happen. And the other is that you still need great lighting crew. You still need gaffers. You need grips. The location departments, yes, they will be. It'll be more difficult. But a lot of what is still called, you still need rigging. You still need equipment. You still need a lot of that. So, and Thailand still has that. It still have the rebate. So I think that Thailand's future, as far as I can tell, is secure at least.
Filming in Thailand.
So we're talking about the future of the industry, and that's for us the time to step in our time machine.
Okay.
So imagine you have the opportunity to travel back in time and meet your own self at a younger age. Okay. Where would this be, and how old would it be? How old would you be?
I would probably go back to the beginning of my legal career. So I would probably be about, 21, 22 years old.
Where would that be?
In New York City.
In New York. Okay, let me set the machine.
Okay.
This is the time traveling machine.
Okay, so we are back in time. You're facing yourself.
Yeah.
Are you going to give you an advice? Tap on the shoulder? What would you say to yourself?
My advice would be to get out sooner. I spent a lot of time at practice law for 14 years in New York City. And I count myself incredibly lucky that even moving here at 39 and delaying my entry into this profession for some years as, due to personal preferences, I wish I had gotten a jump on things earlier. And I think I grew tremendously professionally as a lawyer here.
Filming in Thailand.
Opportunities arose. I think opportunities arose for me, and I think continue to arise in Thailand for a lot of us. And I think in this industry in particular, like when David and Ying said to me, just go ahead and do. I have a
go ahead.
I have a similar story about Lowenstein, which was when we were working on Shanghai. He came and he dropped. I was in the production office at Shanghai. I'd been an entertainment lawyer for 6 weeks, and he dropped a 119-page inter-party agreement in my lap and said, Harvey Weinstein's lawyers and bankers would like to have a call about this at midnight. They would like us to sign. Can you take a look? So I said, sure. And then I looked down the hallway and made sure that Chris was out of eye shot. And I opened my computer and I went to Google and I said, what is an inter-party agreement?
At that time, Google was not intelligent.
and it gave me sort of an idea of what an inter-party agreement was. And I read it. And just before the call, I said to Chris, we were waiting, it was midnight in his hotel room, and we were waiting for Harvey's lawyers and bankers to pick up the phone. And I said, Chris, look, we've just started working together and I don't want to bullshit you. When they answer the phone, I'm going to act like I know what I'm talking about. And I actually, but I don't really. And similar to David Ying, he said, you seem like a smart guy. You'll figure it out. And
that's cool.
When we got off the phone, they said, okay, you don't have to sign. And then he quickly got a call from one of the producers who went, you read that fucking thing? And he's like, I was like, I didn't know what else to do. It was the only thing I had available to me.
John.
Yes.
It's time for us to pass you the award for best guest ever for this episode of Filming in Thailand.
Can I tell Spurrier and Lowenstein and Waller that?
Of course,
okay, all right.
of course. I hope they'll be super jealous. So this is the official T-shirt of BGK Bangkok International Documentary Film Award. One of our main supporter and the only international documentary film award in the area.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I'm very honored.
Filming in Thailand.
Yes, there was a question I wanted to ask you. Why did you feel, because this is what I read, that it was so important for you to start kind of in this monkey business?
To start in?
Because it seems that you were in a monkey business.
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, so let me elaborate.
Oh, is this the release that I wrote for the performing monkey?
So it was not a monkey business; it was a business for a monkey.
It was the business of a monkey.
Of a monkey.
Yeah. No, that I trot that out sometimes. A lot of, most of what I've learned here has been on trial and error and on the go.
Are you actually making reference to an animal, a real monkey, or you have some names in mind?
This unfortunately was an actual monkey. My career has been somewhat monkey. In fact, Crystal the monkey from Hangover is one of the few. I very rarely meet the celebrities. So Crystal the monkey sitting on my head, and I don't have a picture of it because it was on a BlackBerry. You can vanished in the sands of time.
Filming in Thailand.
So, Jonathan, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
It's been a thrill. You shared so many insights, and for people who have been listening to highlights of the show, we will highlight your advice that worth $1 million.
Oh, thanks.
At least, and you can transfer this amount to Filming in Thailand directly. We will discuss later on. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, people, fantastic. That's a wrap.
That was Filming in Thailand, an original podcast brought to you by Taro Documentary on Rudy Podcast, with your host, Stefan Lopez.
Thank you for listening and stay tuned for our next episode of Filming in Thailand.
And I don't think I gave away any secrets.
We'll see the reaction.